Hey guys, Tony Lockhart here, and I've got a kiln opening from late April 2020. Got a handful of different things that I'm practicing with this kiln opening. With this cycle of work, I'm basically practicing a bunch of different things. For instance, I'm doing underglazes, and I'm using a clear matte glaze. So with this opening, I'm starting to realize that there are a handful of areas to work on. Definitely going to need some improvement with the process. So in a moment, you'll see that some of the underglaze is showing up through the clear matte glaze, and then in some areas it's not. What I've realized is after the fact that it's actually a lot better for me to paint on bisque ware, like I have done over here, versus painting on bone dry ware. So if we compare the two, both were done with the same technique, however, during different times. And the one on the left was done with a bisque, so I think we'll get a much better appearance of the underglaze through the overall glaze. Here's a yarn bowl. Got a hole punched into the side, so for crocheters you could have two different colors. With this one I tried to do some stripes on the inside, but the glaze didn't cover evenly. So there's a bumpy area on the right, and then there's a smooth area. And the smooth area has a much thicker application of the glaze. So here's one more yarn bowl. This one has two additional holes punched into the side. Alright, so here's a altered form that I worked on. So created a cylinder, sliced off the sides, and created facets. And I brought the form back in and made this little vase. Really liking both of these. They just turned out nicely. Now, usually when I throw off the hump, I have a little bit of extra clay, so I make these tiny pots for my wife. She has quite a collection of them, so I figured, why not just make a bunch of them to add to her collection. Here are a couple of others. So, just a tiny little piece of clay. Alright, going to the next level. Got a bunch of porcelain ware and I got a bunch of stoneware. So here's the first heartbreak. Notice the cracking. I try to go pretty thin, and keep in mind this is the first time I've ever worked with porcelain. So I've got some good and I've got some bad examples. A lot of them didn't make it through the firing and a lot of them did. Here's a stoneware lidded container. The lid is on a different level. Had a lot of crawling with that one. A lot of glaze running on this one as well. You can see that thick area at the bottom with the collection of glaze. Here's porcelain mixed with sand. Sorry, the couple that I'm showing here are out of frame, so you can't really see the top of the bottles. Alright, so here is a stoneware pitcher. Looks like we have a little bit of crawling at the top. Here's a basket for a coffee filter. Rather like how this one turned out. Here's another lidded vessel done in stoneware. We'll come back to that one in just a bit. Now with the next couple of pots that are going to be showing up, these are all done in porcelain, and they were done with an underglaze painting during the bone dry phase. So you can see that there's quite a bit of bleeding, a little bit of gravity that's bringing down the illustration, and the overall resolution is lost. In some cases, you get this nice blending of the clear glaze and the gray on the inside that I rather like. However, the picture is a little bit off because there's a little bit of running. So this one reminds me of a 3D effect where it has a double image. So I'm really disappointed, but I have some ideas of where to go. Now here's something just for fun. This is a Moroccan sand glaze with an illustration and underglaze painted on it. This is just a utensil cup that we'll use in the kitchen. Okay, so we're going to move to the next level. And with this one, I had a small order where friends asked for tea light lanterns. So I'm just going to speed this up just a little bit. So I basically have a bunch of these lids with a little vent on the top, and what we'll do is we'll put a little tea light inside, and there's a little plate at the bottom that will hold the cover. Most of these are done with speckled buff clay and either glazed with aqua or with the French gray. Alright, so let's go back to those lidded vessels. So here's a two-tone lidded vessel. It's a little tiny jar. And I think I did a good job getting them to match up. I'm really pleased with this one. Now we get a little bit of crawling in this batch. So I think what I'm going to do during the next firing is to lower or slow down the temperature time. I think I fired too rapidly. So while a lot of these things turned out really nicely, you still get a little bit of that crawling. I had a lot of issues with porcelain also cracking, but we'll get to that in a moment. Here's a couple of examples of tiny vessels that have a marbled clay. So I had maybe 3 different clay types that I just wedged together. So I rather like how these guys turned out. I'm just a little disappointed with this batch because the transparent glaze that I have on top was much too opaque. You can't really tell what that beautiful marbling looks like because it just dulls everything down. But oh well, you live and learn. So with this segment of the clip, notice I just picked up the cup and it was shocking because it just snapped right in half. Oh my goodness. So what I'm attempting to do is just to show you what the wall thickness looks like and to see, well, where's the issue with the porcelain. You could tell that there's a little tiny indentation. There's an uneven application of the glaze. This one later on the table in the studio, that one cracked as well. But these thicker ones with the underglaze painting, luckily those turned out all right. So I think moving forward, I really have to take it easy and not try to go too thin with the porcelain. This is a thick vessel, so this one actually survived. But this one cracked on the table about an hour after taking it out of the kiln. So I'm going to focus on uniformity and the overall size of the walls when I do the next layer or when I do the next cycle. So here's the cone 5 that dropped as well, so I'm feeling good. So in this batch I have a lot of little sculptures, so I let my kids have some clay and they made a bunch of little Pusheen cats, and then we just did some underglaze painting. It was really cute. And here's a little cupcake that my wife made, and I just put some of that clear glaze on top. So luckily this worked out nicely. It looks like a glaze on top. Alright, so quick time lapse of removing the second to last layer of shelving. So as we end this video, I wanted to share some of the sculptures my neighbors made. I dropped off clay up and down the street, and I had my neighbors get their kids to go and make these sculptures. I rather like how they turned out. These kids did such a good job, and as I delivered them, I just got a lot of positivity from my neighbors. They're very pleased to have this opportunity. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.